Do or do not, there is no try. Boom. Judah, that's this guy right there. That guy. Welcome back, everybody. Another happy landing. Do or do not, there's no try. One of my favorite quotes. We're here to review Empire Strikes Back in our rewatch. Tanner with me as always. Excited to talk about it. Before we get too far into it, thank you to the Movie Meal patrons, Steve, Kimberly, and Karen. Go get some merch. Everything's linked down in the description. Go do that great stuff. Like, subscribe, share. Please help the channel out. But yeah, Star Wars rewatch, another happy landing. Finally getting to the original trilogy. We had A New Hope. Now we're at Empire. You know, everybody's kind of low-key, high-key, consensus number one. Star Wars Visions will be next week. We'll review that next week.
So excited.
So excited for that. That's going to be awesome. But let's just get into it. We'll go in any direction. So I'll start with my man Tanner here. Tanner, just rewatch an Empire. What are your thoughts, your feelings? Take me somewhere. Take me to a galaxy far, far away.
Number one with a button, baby. Oh, God. It's so good. Oh, man. Just from beginning to end, hands down, the best movie of Star Wars, in my opinion. I don't think that's a particularly controversial opinion by any regard.
No.
But man, it's God, I don't know how many times that I've watched Empire Strikes Back over and over again, but every single time that I watch this, it is a treat through and through. Like I was actually I've had this conversation a couple different times with a couple different people of like, I think I can give like Star Wars Empire like a 9.5 out of 10 because no movie's like perfect, but I'm like, this is almost like personally a perfect movie to me. It's got a bit of everything, and oh my God, just in terms of the music, John Williams coming in as per usual, knocking this whole thing out of the park. The visuals have been upped since the previous one.
Got a higher budget. We got a higher budget.
Right. and something that I really kind of like, especially getting back into the original trilogy, that I really kind of feel and notice is I just gravitate so much to Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, and Carrie Fisher as our main characters. Like the chemistry that they have between all of them, I think is just so palpable, and I keep on noticing that throughout these movies that we keep on watching. Not saying that the other ones don't have that chemistry or that there isn't some level of chemistry there, but basically just by sheer force of personality, I think these people are just so endearing. Oh,
well,
God.
It helps when Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford at that time were very close off set.
Yes, very close.
Very close off set. I'm gonna do this one thing right at the start for me, because I thought of it, and I have to talk about it, okay?
Yeah.
One of the complaints that we got so much after The Last Jedi was they're not together. They have to be together all the time. And I was sitting here watching Empire, and I was like, these guys haven't been together since the first 20 minutes of the movie. Like, none of R2 and Luke are gone, and then we've got our other group. And I just was sitting there being like, I think we remember some things a little differently when we're not rewatching all the time, because they just aren't together. And I just had to get that off the back, because that was the big deal, like a big deal. And then even in Rise of Skywalker, they weren't together the whole movie. They were together for part of the movie. But anyway, I love Empire. Every time I watch Empire and A New Hope, I sit there and think to myself, this is 1A and 1B, and I still hold true to that, but Empire is 1A. I just, the lightsaber fight, there's a little bit of campiness. I mean, Mark Hamill's screaming no is just still so like goofy kind of, and obviously it's like I don't laugh, but I do laugh. It's a weird thing. Like when I'm watching it, I'm like, this is intense, and then he does his face, he's just screaming no, and then he jumps, and then I kind of giggle because I start really thinking about his face. But like Vader is great. We get to see some real power in Vader this movie. from the moment Han shoots 3 blasts at him and he blocks them with his hand and then like sucks the gun out with the Force with his other arm. It's just
Right.
it's real power. They have the duel. The fighting is up. You know, it's not jabby of the prequels, but it's not way over choreographed. It's what they could do in a big suit and with Mark back then. And
Right.
I love it. This movie's awesome. It's darker. It's grittier. We meet new characters.
And the
We
bad
go
guys
to a
win.
new planet. Yeah, and the bad guys win. I like that. It's part of the reason I like Black Panther. I like the bad guys winning. I like. I love that moment. Mark at the end is Luke's hanging on the thing, and he sits there and he's constantly is like, Obi-Wan, Obi-Wan, Obi-Wan. He's like, I need help. I need a path, and he doesn't get it, and he kind of stops and he realizes I need to not call for Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan told me he can't help me. I need to help myself. Who can help me? Leia can help me.
Right.
And I love that moment. But anyway, go back to you. What do you think?
Well, going off your little your bit on the lightsaber fight in particular, with this one second. I'm actually scrolling through it right now just to find oh my gosh, I always forget that happens at like literally the back 20 minutes of the movie. But anyways, like I know some people like talk about the prequels being a little bit slower with their lightsaber fights, but I mean, like I really get this, and what I love about this one is I really get the sense that Vader is testing Luke. He's not throwing himself into this fight because he understands that Luke is going to be, he's newer, and that if he threw his entire self, oh no, I just killed my son. Oh great.
Yeah.
And so it really kind of starts off as this kind of like slow, almost cat and mouse testing each other's boundaries kind of a thing. And then it really, I feel like once you kind of get in like the center corridor, that's where it really starts to escalate. You start to see some like heavy throws being thrown at each other. And I know it, I don't know. It's I guess you can bring up like, yes, it's not a particularly exciting fight. I think there's so much more emotionally that is happening with a fight like this, and that's
Yeah.
why some of those old, like some of the old trilogy fights, I think, sure, don't look as pretty, but there's just a lot more to them that I really love.
Yeah.
It's kind of like I mean the fights that we get out of Mandalorian with Ahsoka versus the Magistrate. It's a little
Yeah.
bit slower, a little bit more methodical, but like there's this constant like move counter move feeling to it all. Also, not to mention, I mean, very like samurai esque. But I also gotta bring up the point of this movie was the beginning of my obsessions with just like mechs as a whole. That's entirely because of the entire fight sequence for the Battle of Hoth. The first time as a kid seeing one of those AT-ATs, by the way, I got the nice little shirt, AT-AT.
I love it. I love it.
The first time I ever saw one of those AT-ATs like coming over the hill as they're marching and bearing down on the rebels, I was like, "Oh my god, what is this? I want this so bad."
Yeah.
I just if there's one thing that I've always just loved is the design aesthetic and the just the cool vehicle starships, things that existed in Star Wars. That's always what drew me as a kid. And so like watching Empire for the first time and seeing those come out onto the field, oh my god, it was so cool. I loved it. And I still love it to this day. I geek out about it all the time.
Yeah, no, I just love this movie. The AT-ATs, the Battle of Hoth is awesome. Opening up with just everything. It's poked fun of so much now, but doing like wrapping the rope, around the AT-ATs is just, it's just like back then it was like a creative way to figure out how to beat them. Like it wasn't, meant to be campy. It was like, we can't beat them. How are we going to beat them? And I always love that moment. I love Hoth.
Well, I mean, that's always what the rebellion has kind of been about, you know?
Yeah.
Is like they understand that they're outgunned, so they're just going to try and get whatever they possibly can to fight against them.
Yeah, guerrilla warfare.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's exceptionally creative. I know that there's some people that will probably poo-poo that. It's like, oh, that's silly. But I mean, I don't know. It's a fun campy adventure that we're getting through the galaxy that it's just got so much heart.
Yeah.
There's another question that I'm really kind of curious towards the later section of the movie, but also not to mention, like, I know that what was it? A New Hope had a really took a little bit of a dark turn, but I mean, it still felt like very hopeful. John Williams music's coming in to save the day. Of just like X-wings and like like Biggs Darklighter, Luke's best friend, just getting blown out of the sky. It's got its moments of people just getting axed left and right. And then they completely continue the trend of like, oh, we're going to introduce all these rebel pilots, and oh, they're going to die within the first 5 minutes of this fight.
Yeah.
The movie's not afraid to pull punches.
Yeah.
And I love that. There was actually a criticism that that kind of, like, especially of all three of the new films that I find, I think all of them kind of have this issue, whereas this movie I really do think kind of exemplifies show don't tell, whereas the sequel trilogies can sometimes they're gonna take that pause in that moment to explain every little detail instead of letting the audience infer, oh, what's going on here? Oh, that's happening. Let me go ahead and piece this together real quick. Whereas Empire really kind of just, you see a bunch of things happen on screen and you're just kind of expected to kind of like put it together of what's going on, where they're going, and what their plans are. And they're not going to stop and take a second look at the camera and say,
yeah,
oh, by the way, I have to go to why do I want to Dagobah? Oh my god.
Yeah.
Good Lord. I need to go to Dagobah to go get training, and then I'm going to go to Tachi to get my power converters. No. But yeah, anyways, I've geeked out. I can keep on going, but Al, what are your is there some other snippets that have been really kind of popping in your mind, or what is, I guess I mean, for as long as we've known each other, what's one of your favorite scenes from Empire, or your favorite scene?
My favorite scene from Empire, I think, is the conversation between Luke, Yoda, and Obi-Wan when he leaves. I think it's my favorite, like, one-off scene, not longer sequence, but I think it's that discussion of, I have to go, they're going to die. No, you should not go. You have not completed your training. You don't know that they're going to die. You're going off of pure fear and assumptions. You're not acting like a Jedi. And I love that moment. I love Obi-Wan saying, look, I'm not going to be able to help you. I can't help you anymore if you're going to act this way, Luke. And then it has the huge reveal. He's our only hope if he turns. No, there is another, to set up the sequel for Return of the Jedi.
Oh yeah,
that is my individual favorite scene. I mean, I love the fight. I mean, I love everything in here. I love other moments of the training, him going to the cave, the Hoth battle. I love so much of it. Chewie losing his mind trying to fight the little guys to get why can't I? They're on the Ugnaughts to get to get C-3PO. He's like screaming at him. I love it. Yeah, that's my individual favorite scene. What is yours?
Oh gosh, the problem is there's so many amazing, like, I really just kind of feel as though this movie is just like, we're going from one amazing scene to another amazing scene. But honestly, I think for me, it might actually have to be the moment of Yoda pulling the X-wing out of the swamp.
I was thinking about that.
Like,
that's a good one.
that
It's a
is
great one.
such a magical. I think that was such a magical moment, especially of like, uh, by this point in time, we really don't know like what the Force really is about, or like what kind of the capability is. So I mean, witnessing that for the first time, it's just one of those moments where you're like, oh, there's a lot more to this than I realized. And I mean, Luke's literally experiencing the same thing. And uh oh man. And also not to mention there like the Yoda has that line in this movie of like always focused on the horizon. Not here.
Yeah,
Not what he is doing.
yeah,
And I would say that that's another excellent one because like you're talking about like with the twin sons of like, okay, I gotta like ground myself. You're staring at the horizon. You gotta focus on like right now is always something that I've kind of taken to heart as well.
yeah.
Um
I love that scene. Him lifting it up. It's impossible, and him whining on the tree, the fallen tree. And Yoda just boom picks the whole thing up, and he's like, "Really?" He's like, "I'm about to die. Like, I can still pick it up." It's
I
that
can't
scene is
believe it. That is why you
yeah.
failed. Oh,
Yeah, oh, it's such a good line too, and it really just sums up a lot of Luke. I mean, Luke never finishes his training. I mean, he leaves, and then the next time he really is with Yoda dies. He doesn't really get to finish his training with a master. I mean,
right.
it kind of makes me think of what Dave Filoni talked about on that documentary, or the behind the scenes of the Mandalorian episode, where he talked about how like Ahsoka is actually wiser than Luke. She might not be more powerful, but she is wiser and she's a better fighter because she was trained,
Right.
where he is a lot of raw power that he is focusing on. And obviously he trains himself in ways and he does become more mature and he learns as a lesson that Yoda and Obi-Wan are trying to teach him in 5 and 6. But it's so good for his arc. He truly loses. He gets his hand cut off, finds out his dad runs the Empire,
Yeah.
and they lose one of their best friends, and they're at a loss, and they leave with a plan. I mean, they leave with hope. It's we'll see at the rendezvous point on Tatooine, but we got to get ready first. And I just love this movie so much. It's just
It's
so good.
it's so good. It's so good. Also, not to
Yeah.
mention, like, one of the most iconic movie moments that's ever been put on the silver screen with the Luke, I am your father. Although, I mean, like, that's not actually the line. But I mean, just that scene as a whole, and like how much people lost their marbles over the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah. No,
I thought.
sorry. I was listening to you. I know. I was just, yeah, you're good. I got off in La La Land there a little bit.
uh,
Uh,
it's it's something that's just pervasive now. Also something I feel bad about. Like some of the younger viewers of the original trilogy, um, where by the time that a lot of younger viewers get to it, they already know, like, it's been such a big and well-known spoiler that that's not really something that you can like really enjoy on your own, because it's so pervasive in like regular day pop culture that it just gets ruined for everyone. Same with like T2, or even the whole Snape kills Dumbledore
yeah.
bit. But I mean, it also goes to show, like, it's just one of those big like moments that occurs where you're like, oh, didn't see that one coming. Uh,
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine being like, I remember being a kid and watching that for the first time, being like, oh, what? Oh my god. But I couldn't even imagine when this movie originally dropped, and like the big Star Wars fans that just lost the what I'm really curious if you like looked back at that time period, if there was anyone that was like even had a remote guess that was going to be the case.
I know I've looked back and I know that people were like hyped. Like that was when
Hmm.
people were waiting outside so long and everything and really started the craze because the first one was so big.
Right.
And that just had just seeped into the zeitgeist of just our culture. But I do remember I remember listening to a couple critics um, who were alive at that time who have talked about how that they remember like when they went with their parents as kids, that their parents who loved the first ones as young parents came out of this and they didn't like parts of it. Because I remember a lot of that came out on podcasts I was listening to and stuff when The Last Jedi came out, because I remember some critics being like, everybody's mad at like this, and this, but a lot of people were mad at Empire for doing similar things, kind of,
Right.
where like you finally meet the Emperor. You don't meet the Emperor in the fourth movie. They talk about him a little bit, but you don't meet the Emperor. And but you meet him, and it's just this floating head that shows up for a minute. And I remember that critic really talking about that. But I know people, I think for the most part, the movie was just loved and just seeped into the culture. I think you can find clips of like old TV news reporters like talking to people on the streets who were like, oh my gosh, like Han Solo, this is so amazing. Like, man, if I got a chance to go back in time for like one thing, like Empire might be something that you have to consider. It's like, I know there's all these amazing things, but it's like, man, is it just a deep Star Wars nerd in me? Like, I just would want to go there and experience that for the first time with everybody, you know, like
Right.
see what people felt. Talk to the nerds then and
You know,
find George and tell him, don't sell.
I was something else that I was actually going to bring up with this particular movie, of all the rewatches and things that we've been doing, and like extra content that we've been consuming in order. I think this is the least what's like all of the extraneous content that we've consumed, I feel as though has had the least impact on this movie. But I mean, that also makes sense considering that you get movies that lead into A New Hope, and then this is the middle, followed up by Return of the Jedi. So like we get a lot of content after that's directly connecting to Return of the Jedi, and we get a lot of content before being like Rogue One leading directly into it. But there really is not any content that exists in those in between periods, those like 2-year periods between movies, which I
Yeah.
found fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they exist, but now they're in Legends. Yes.
Yeah. 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 Well, not even then, not between Empire and Return of the Jedi. There was like nothing. It was just the toys for the most part, right?
Right. Right.
They weren't writing any books until after. I didn't think they really started the crazy book craze until after Return of the Jedi.
Actually,
Because I think they needed the story, didn't they? Because they needed the final arc.
So I thought Shadows of the Empire was a book that ended up coming out. And that one takes place between episode.
But was it released before the original trilogy was finished?
I don't know. Let me find out. When was Shadow?
Even if some of them were released, it's just, you just don't think, you know, it's not consumed so much anymore. Like, it's like the way you played Star Wars was very much Dave Filoni and what Jon Favreau say of sitting in the sandbox with your buddies making up the next story. You know, like Boba Fett hanging out with Luke Skywalker, hired on some job or something, you know?
Right. No, you're totally right. It was published as a video game for the N64, and also came out with a comic book series that came along with it in '96.
Oh yeah, so that was well after.
Yes.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, I think the Thrawn trilogy actually starts in '93. I think is when it was released.
Around our birth.
Yes.
We're dated.
Heir
We're old.
of the Empire. Same year. Oh, May 91. Okay.
Okay, or a little earlier, but
A little earlier.
yeah. So it felt like it was just kind of stayed, is what it seems like, until we
Right.
got kind of to where we're at now, where it's like we have to consume Star Wars 24/7, 365.
Could you imagine that gap of like Return of the Jedi comes out, and then there's nothing?
Yeah.
After that.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, you talk to people back then and they say, you know, when it was that first trailer for Phantom Menace came out, how it just blew them away, because it was like, we didn't think we were ever going to get Star Wars again. Star Wars is back. It's it looks new. It's a prequel. It's going to be the story of Vader. I mean, you talk to some people who grew up watching the original trilogy, and they're like, I loved A Phantom Menace when it came out. It's like, I don't like it now, but I loved it when it first came out because I had to get through my goggles. I had to kind of realize that I'm not 7 anymore, and the lightsabers, I'm not just taken back by all that.
Right.
But it's yeah. Anyway,
Back to
Empire
Empire.
Strikes Back, the one that's behind you there. Uh, but it's God, the movie's just so good. Lando, we haven't talked about Lando, but Lando being introduced is just he is so good. He's so charismatic, and yet like Chewie choking him, and Leia kind of playing mediator, deciding whether she kind of sitting there like I've got the decision. I can kill this man or not. I can tell Chewie to do it, or Chewie can let him go. And him calling him Han, and we just kind of get more of Han Solo, and I love Lando. Him throwing the cape on after Han punches him, he gets up, my friend, and then just hits him. It's great. But what do you think of Lando?
I'm in the same boat. Billy D. Williams as Lando is just
He's amazing.
Chef's kiss. The amount of charisma that is just like seeping from this man's pores is insane. And also,
Yeah.
I'm happy that we also get a lot more of Han. I personally feel like we do get a bit of the scoundrel side of like Han in episode 1, but episode 2 I really kind of feel like we get a lot of those like fun mannerisms of Han. Like one of my favorite moments of like Lando's approaching him and it was like, "You no good swindler," and all Han does is
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's so good. Han is so great. I love Han's whole we're gonna hide in the asteroid field. They'd be crazy to follow us. They hide, they get attacked, and then they're like, all right, what are we going to do here? And they just hide on the ship. Like that is like people talk about, how incredibly written it is, but as time goes on, it's like that's campy. That's why we have campiness in Star Wars, because that is a campy moment. Like that is a Star Wars moment. It's Han going, all right, well, guerrilla warfare. Let's hide on the back of the ship and wait. When they release the trash, we'll fly out with them. I like that moment where he goes, if they follow routine procedure, he knows that because he was in the Imperial Navy.
Also, he was a smuggler.
Yeah. And I like that he knew that, and they float away and they get away. It's a great moment. It's just,
but that's like a clever thing. I wouldn't even say that's as much of a campy thing. That's one of those moments that's you're like, where did they go? And then all of a sudden he's latched onto the back of the ship, and then they have a plan for him to get off of the back of the ship. Oh, I love it.
When I say so campy, good. I think new fans now view it as campy.
Oh,
like that's the campiness in Star Wars. Like they're hiding behind the ship. It kind of looks funky as the ship, the Falcon's back there, but I think it is clever. I think it's Han being clever and being smart on how to get it. That's an Indiana Jones move we had right there.
And then also not to mention Boba Fett being the being the guy that something where I'm talking about like this movie being show don't tell, especially because I was just thinking about two separate scenes. I think one of them was in The Last Jedi, so I'm gonna take a quick shot at your baby.
My nephew.
So one moment that I was thinking of like they drift away with the garbage, they let everyone else shoot off, they activate their engines and fly away. Meanwhile, Boba Fett, being the clever bounty hunter that he is, he's like, oh no, I'm onto you, I know exactly what you're doing. He hops in and pretends like he's a piece of garbage, then sees them, goes off and follows them. There's nothing about like that's being said of like what's happening. All we know is that Boba Fett is following him.
Yeah.
And then once he knows where they're going, then he alerts the Empire and they show up and they beat them to Bespin. That's where they're hiding. All of a sudden he's like, it would be an honor if you would join us for dinner. And so you get all of that happening, and you just have to put that together as an audience. Whereas something that like the Last Jedi does is I'm trying to remember the guy that sold the like hacker guy that was in the prison with them.
Oh, yeah, Benicio del Toro's character.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't
It
remember his name.
it kind of has that moment of like you know, everything happens, all of a sudden they're surrounded, all of a sudden he just strolls up out of nowhere. It didn't really I guess that's just also kind of one of those moments where I was like, you didn't really see that coming. I mean,
Sure.
now that I guess I think about that as well, I mean, like, we also don't know where the allegiance of this character lies, but uh also, unfortunately, I just kind of feel like he was an underutilized character, but
No, he
uh
was. We'll get there. We'll
we'll
get
get
there.
there. We'll get there.
No, I think it is clever, and I think it is really good. Show don't tell us, and I think because you know what the conversation is they're like, where the heck did they go? We know the hyperdrive is not working, or they would have fled a while ago. And Boba Fett probably was like, honestly, they're probably just kind of hiding out. We probably have lost them. We don't know where they're at, but they're probably waiting for something. Let me go out with the trash, and I'll see if I notice anything. And he
Also,
does.
not to mention, Boba Fett's not gonna like, Boba Fett's gonna have those thoughts, but he's not gonna tell the Empire, because if he tells
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Empire, they're gonna
They'll.
grab him,
Yeah.
and
Good point.
he's not gonna get his payday. So
Yeah,
he's like, no, I'm gonna track, I'm gonna prove my worth, and then I'm gonna make a deal with the Empire. It's like, I know where he's at right now. I followed him. You have to give me Han, or I'm not telling you the location.
yeah.
That kind of a thing.
We do got to hard cap it here soon, but I do want to mention this point here. One of the things I do like is Vader constantly changes the deal
Mhm.
on Lando, and Lando keeps arguing, and he keeps being like, "Look, I'm going to kill you if you don't knock it off." And one thing I like is when Boba Fett starts acting up, and he's like, "This is not part of the deal. I want my bounty." He doesn't say like something that he says to Lando that seems threatening. He goes, "We'll pay you. We will. The Empire will
Right.
compensate you if you're not paid." And it's now knowing the Mandalorians and everything. Boba Fett is just a simple man trying to make his way, but he has Mandalorian armor, which is specifically created to fight Jedi, Sith, lightsaber Force users. And
Right.
Vader's like, look, I could be. We know Vader probably one-on-one wins at the end of the day against Boba Fett, straight up. But I think Vader's like, I don't want to duke it out with this guy right now.
No.
Like, I'm not going to threaten him because this guy will start doing some stuff. We'll pay you. We'll pay you. Don't worry. You'll get paid. I like that moment. It's a moment I don't think people talk about enough.
Yeah.
But it's a
No, I
good
agree.
moment of showing how really good Boba, how much of a threat Boba Fett is. It's not just a bounty hunter that's on his side. It's this guy could actually take me. Lando's not going to do anything to me.
I've been to Mandalore. I see you. No, we
Yeah,
good.
it's like,
We're square.
look, I fought side by side with some of those people. I know you'll take me out. I know you got the flamethrower. I know you'll disintegrate me. Like I don't want to fight this guy. He's got a jetpack. I can't fight this guy. I like that moment a lot.
One thing I also wanted to bring up before we go was the one thing that I do kind of feel is, I mean, the one bearing that I do actually think one of the other films does have on this one would be Solo.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, I haven't like fully formulated this whole thought yet. So I'm maybe this is just kind of me wading through it publicly. But
Sure.
part of me, like, I initially had this idea in my head of previously watching what Lando was in Solo and then watching what he is in this one, where he seems like he's really cordial and okay to like help these guys out. He turns on them, but then he eventually is like, you know what? No, I am going to do the right thing. Feels a little at odds of like the character that we get from Solo. I guess from the impressions that I always kind of got from him in Solo is that no, like, screw you, Han. I literally don't care about you in the slightest at all. Like, I'm gone.
Yeah.
Deuces. So like, I don't there's a little part of me that when Lando is like, he does the turn of like, no, I'm going to do the good thing. I guess I'm a little surprised that he wouldn't just be like, you know what? No, I'm gonna like look out for myself. Bye, everybody. But
Yeah.
maybe it's also just a character moment for him, as he's like, no, I understand that if the Empire does actually come to full fruition, that there's no uh
Yeah.
that there's no bartering with them. I can't make a deal. I can't just
Yeah.
bring my charismatic selves. They're gonna screw me. So
There's a little bit too of, that line in Solo, you're the good guy, Han. Like you're going to be the good guy at the end of the day. And he does that in this movie. He's the good guy. He says, look, I'll do it. I love his iconic line. I love you. I know.
I know.
I love it. It's so good. So Han. And Harrison Ford just is great. But yeah, I think it does. I think for all the meh about Solo, I think Lawrence Kasdan, what got in there of his script, I think really does do Han some good justice. But I mean, outside of the name thing, which who knows who was that?
I guess maybe looking back after watching both those films in chronological order, I was just kind of sitting there thinking like, there's, instead of like the two of them separating and leaving in a huff, I think I would have liked if they had like a cordial, but like, I know you're gonna like draw the gun on me at any moment, kind of a relationship, if that makes any sense. Whereas I think the movie, I kind of feel as though that Lando's just like, nah, screw you, bye.
Yeah. Oh, I love when they talk about the ship and he goes in and he thinks he's gonna hit him and he hugs him. Oh, it's so good. But
they told me they fixed the ship. It's not my fault.
Yeah, and then C-3PO sitting there. What do you mean you talk to the hyperdrive and you talk to it or whatever? And you can't fix it. And then boom, they take off. He falls in a little vent. And
this is the movie where C-3PO gets annoying. I will admit.
I like the way C-3PO is used in this one. I didn't find him annoying. I think he does have his banter. He's annoying, but I think they specifically made him annoying.
Yes,
agreed. They specifically said, we're going to really pull at Han. And there are times I think Han's being a little mean. Han needs to calm down. Give C-3PO
also, not to mention,
a break.
They finally just start shutting him off when he gets a little too far. It's like, the odds must make it.
Yeah, C-3PO, goes too far, but Han a couple times he's just mean to him for no reason. Like the Hoth moment is the one I really think of, where he's like, nobody's seen Captain Skywalker, and then he just puts the finger up and hushes him, and then he goes and talks to a guard, and it's like, just let C-3PO. They're gonna tell you the same thing 3PO's gonna tell you, Han.
Right.
But yeah, it's intentional, and I think they try in the next one to make him less obnoxious by making him like, I have to be the king of the Ewoks to make sure that you all, survive this or whatever. But anyway, so this is our consensus one. It's the top of the list. It just is. It's just Empire. It's how it goes. So yeah, I think for us, we're going to have to hard cap it, but I think this is a great talk. Great show. Love Empire. It's awesome. Guys, comment, what is your favorite scene of Empire? What did you think of what we talked about? Put all that down below. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you, Moon Meal patrons, everybody. Go get some merch. I'll link down in the description. Tanner, thanks for joining today.
Thank you.
I always love having you on. Yes. And for another happy landing, we are out of here.
Watch out for those wampas. They're scary.
Terrifying.